Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of Mahogany Thoughts. This is a podcast that's dedicated to enlighten, uplift, and enrich you with information. I am one of your co hosts, Dr. Terrence Duncan, and with me, I got my main man, a close friend, and another savvy brother, Mr. Terry Butler. Mr. Butler, how you doing?
I'm peaceful. What's good?
Man, I'm hanging in there, man. Right now, we are recording this live through Skype. He is at his place. I'm at my place. We are um, practicing the shelter in place, mandatory stay at home, what have you. We wanted to be able to just be able to provide a podcast for listeners to be able to listen to, not just only during this stay at home orders, but actually beyond. So, the purpose of this particular podcast, like I said, is that we're trying to uplift, we're trying to encourage, and be able to provide you with information that's very practical and information that's going to be able to help you and your family for generations to come. Um, Real quickly, what is the Mahogany Legacy? Mahogany Thoughts came from the Mahogany Legacy Project. It's a book that I'm currently working on, and it focuses on 5 areas that will provide cues to be able to improve statistical areas such as healthcare, education, financial independence, social change, and job placement slash entrepreneurship, because I think they're a little bit interconnected. Um, we have a background in the history of providing mentorship before in person. We have did this before. Butler, just tell me what you thought about as far as the mentoring was.
Oh, it was a beautiful thing, man. I mean, to get out there and share our thoughts and ideas with the people. And I think the most beautiful thing was how receptive they were and how eager they were to learn more. So, it helped us research on what we do to, I guess, become more astute. I guess where financial literacy is concerned, and then being able to just give out the information to the people and see how receptive they was. It was great. I loved it. I loved the process.
Yeah, I mean, and you said something that was really enlightening stuff because of the fact that we did provide information, not just on financial literacy and stuff, but we provided connection with some of the mentees. And some of the mentees to this day, we still stay in contact with, whether it be directly or if they're following us through different social media platforms. But, it was funny, man. I actually remember just that very first day, we came in, had a whole bunch of notes and stats and everything prepped, and then that very first session, within the first 5-10 minutes, everything was thrown out the window. And it was just kind of like, well, we're just gonna have to start basically from ground zero and find out what the root cause was. What are the main issues? As far as them understanding the basic fundamentals of finances. It was more so also on Black entrepreneurship, but it's just so many different things as far as being unbanked and making sure people that have life insurance, and just be able to provide them the information so we can at least start a foundation. What did you remember most about that part?
First, one of the most thing that stuck in my mind as you were talking is how you left there being known as Mister. Did you track your miles?
Right, right, right.
Yeah,
Did you track your miles?
right. You gave out so much game on the tax saving then, and as far as the importance of establishing your LLC or your C corp, however you want to have your business structure be, and taking advantage of that structure. I mean, that's why the tax codes are there. So they got hit in the, they got hit in the head with that. Did you track your miles? It was time to go somewhere.
Every week, every session,
I
every
remember
session.
that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, Tell us a little bit about your background, man.
So basically, I own a an insurance agency. I'm an insurance broker. We have contracts with roughly 40 to 45 of the largest companies in the country, um, in all lines of insurance, from auto to home to life, health, all types of commercial insurance, from workman's comp, liability, property, everything. So basically, I just I help my clients up there insurance packages with the thing that best meets their needs. I'm not tied down to one company. So it truly helps me work for my client versus working for the company. So that part I definitely like. We also provide financial planning to our clients that need it, help them set up the foundation. One of uh, I push probably life insurance more than anything because I just believe that I guess as a people, especially us, we have to have that foundation because we really weren't raised. I remember my father and mother coming up. If they had $50,000 of life insurance, they were satisfied because I think most of our people look at life insurance like it's just burial insurance, but no, life insurance should actually go to replacing your income, paying off debts, so each generation won't have to start off from ground zero. So basically, I've been doing that for about 12 years now. I'm also learning more about the foreign exchange market. Learning
Hold
how
on,
to trade
before you go
Okay.
into that, you got to give yourself a plug. What's the name of your company?
I did not say
What's
the
the
name of
best
my
way that people can
company.
go ahead and reach out to you?
Name of my company is DF Global Insurance Advisors. Website is www.dfglobalinsurance.com. Um, got my Facebook page is in the process of being redone, and you can catch me on Facebook under Terry Butler or Instagram under Terry Butler if you do a search. Um, but on the website you can request quotes, request different information and things like that. You can there's even a calculator on there where you can it'll help you decide how much life insurance you actually need for you. Most people tell me they don't know how much life insurance they need until I go through a bunch of questions and asking them about their debts, about their current income, and things like that. So we try to tailor it to each individual.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. We're gonna definitely get into the life insurance aspect later and stuff because this is where your expertise will definitely come in handy, especially in the first episode, and especially in light of everything that's going on. Um, we
Yeah,
you
man,
talked about.
we in
Go
a
ahead.
whole new world now.
Oh yeah,
It's,
absolutely.
it's crazy.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we were talking about prior to the start of the show is where we are as a people, and you look at all the people that are affected, such worldwide in this particular matter, and you pray. First off, we want to send our thoughts and prayers for all those who are working on the front line. We definitely understand the struggle that you guys are going through. We also want to be also extend our thoughts and prayers for those who may be personally affected, whether it be directly or just through acquaintances. So, for myself personally, it's like I was telling Butler, I probably know about 7 people who have been affected. 7 or 8 people has been affected directly or indirectly based on this virus. So this virus is very real. A friend of mine had lost her uncle most recently due to coronavirus, and I have a family member who's also hospitalized right now and sedated because of the coronavirus. So this is very real. Um, just make sure you take care of yourself. For those who are staying at home, and please take heed of these warnings. This is really legit. The other thing too, I wanted to say also, circling back to what the previous point, is that we're in a place of time where we as a people, um, after this is all said and done, whether it lasts for another month or 2 or 3 months, the economy has been so redefined. And Butler had talked about forex, and we're going to touch that next. But the economy in the world is going to be so redefined in ways that this is probably our best opportunity as a people to make this change. I'm not into the big whole, black versus white. I'm not into this whole big, race war or race battles or anything like that. I just want to make sure that when I turn around that my people are good. That's a
No
love for
doubt.
my culture. That's a love for my people. Um, there's some good apples and there's some bad apples across the board, but we would be nothing if we're not able to give back and be able to share this information to help uplift our people. So I mean, so if you're not black and you're listening to the podcast, welcome. I hope you learned something about this. I hope you learned something more about us. And hopefully you can look at ways that you can, chip in and assist when we come to certain projects or under certain discussions. But our goal right now is to try to help redefine a paradigm that exists within America, where we develop a lot of our redevelop our cultural identity. We help redevelop our neighborhoods uninterrupted. Be able to help improve a lot of areas where we're struggling collectively, as well as reverse some of the negative trends that's associated by being Black in America. So this podcast is what the gist of the podcast is about. Butler had mentioned something about foreign exchange market. Just real briefly, since you mentioned it, can you just tell the listeners what foreign exchange market is about?
Okay, no doubt. Foreign exchange market is basically the largest financial market on the planet. There's probably, I think, a little over $7 trillion traded daily on the foreign exchange market. And basically, just give you a small summary of that. It basically tracks the different values between the different currencies of the world. Let's say, for example, the euro. The value of the euro moves every second
Mm-hmm.
daily. So, and then you take the US dollar also, the value of the US dollar also moves every second. So, trading basically, you're trying to predict at any certain given time using different tools and techniques that you come upon. Is the euro gaining in value over the dollar, or is the US dollar gaining in value over the euro? So if you want to say you see something happen in the news where, um, let's say, for example, one of the largest companies in the US, let's say, for example, Boeing CEO uh, resigned, that will probably take a ripple somewhat the US dollar, possibly. So you can look at that news and say, okay, so the value of the euro will probably go up more versus the value of the dollar. So you just it's about timing and just it's a lot of technical analysis involved sometimes, but if you just learn to study the markets, you better take advantage. And you can trade any foreign currency. You can trade gold, you can trade Bitcoin, you can trade oil, you can trade the Dow. So there's lots of different things you can trade. I just try to find your favorite pair and just study it and study the way it moves, the way it has moved in the past, and just take advantage of all that technical analysis. It's very interesting, very fun. I'm doing a lot of demo accounts right now. I've done a few live accounts, but I'm definitely in the learning phases with it. But it's definitely interesting to see how money moves. I love to study money and see how it affects different economies and things like that. So I'm having fun.
Yeah, there's something that I definitely want to get into myself. Definitely something I want to study. And this is just a disclaimer from both of us. There is not really one investment vehicle that's better than the other, but
Absolutely not.
whatever that you do decide to invest in, make sure you study, okay, and understand that everybody's performance is different. So for myself, I do more stocks than anything else. I play with mutual funds. I actually play in the stock market. Also, I have a pretty strong understanding of financial leverage and understanding how to do a lot of things financially and be able to understand how to use the calculators to project how much I would have in X amount of years, how much I may have, whether it be 5 years, whether it be in 25 or 30 years. But foreign exchange market is very popular. There are going to be some people who may not be for foreign exchange, and that's totally fine. There's some people who's not into stock market game. That's totally fine. There's some people who may say they do real estate. Totally fine. And as the shows go on, we will definitely touch on those particular areas more often. So um, I want to get into, I guess before we get into that, I want to give a little bit about my background. My background, I actually have a doctorate in business. I've teach numerous classes online, everywhere from the doctorate in business administration program to the MBA level to the Masters in Healthcare Administration program. I wrote a couple of books, and you'll be able to see that on the podcast website. And that was also my main website. But what I have and what Butler has as well, which makes us a great team for this particular podcast, is the passion. I have a passion to be able to give back because I'm not going to say that I'm super accomplished. I'm not going to say I'm well accomplished, but I've done enough and I've seen enough. And I want to be able to give back that information back to the people. So you'll hear me say it, borrowing from the Black Panthers and ode to other people in the civil rights movement, give power back to the people. I've had the corporate titles, I've made the six figures, did the exotic travels, um, highlight concerts, been some real great concerts, sporting events, you name it. There's not too many things I have not done, but one thing, and I think Butler, you can relate to this. When you turn around, you don't see too many of us.
No, not at all.
Or actually, if you do see us, unfortunately, you see a lot of us working, but you don't see a lot of us enjoying. And so I don't feel guilty about it, but I think that's something that can be done about it. Meaning that what can we do to be able to share our experiences to be able to give back towards other people? And so when I wrote the first book, that was part of my primary purpose was to be able to show how I got there because people would make comments like, "Oh, it must be nice for me to do XYZ," or some people may say that everybody's not able, or they may say, I can't even think of something else. They may say something crazy, but I wouldn't get upset about it. But I would say, if you really want to know, come holler at me, And so, with my man right here, even though we're not side by side through Skype, come holler at us. This is what the podcast is. We are giving you this information free of charge, and hopefully, we'll continue to build a catalog that will wind up being your education. And we're going to bring in a variety of guests, excuse me, to be able to do the podcast and with a variety of backgrounds. And we're going to bring some real people, but we also want to bring real experiences because one thing that him and I can tell you, we both were not born with a silver spoon in our mouth. And that is what also motivated us to not only be where we are today, but to be able to give back to the people. What do you think about that, man?
Yeah, it reminded me of Line of New Jack City when
You
Nino was on the stand. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. The Ms. Hawkins.
Miss Hawk. I mean, we can always bring Kareem Akbar, the educated brother from the bank.
Right, we should.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's true. Most of us, one of the facts and stuff that we'll definitely get into later on in future podcast episodes when we start breaking down wealth and excuse me, how to climb towards wealth, is that Black people as a whole have started to climb in a lot of financial indicators. We're starting to see more people employed. We're seeing more people starting to earn a little bit more money, and able to at least start living into a retirement, or like Butler has said, be able to have life insurance. But we can always improve. And so again, that's one of the purposes of the podcast. So the purpose of this particular podcast is going to be about life insurance, as stated earlier. Mr. Butler has extensive experience in life insurance, and I'm going to give you the floor for a couple of minutes. And just if you want to go ahead and start off with your background, like what led you to life insurance and what led you to understand life insurance, because I think that's really important before we start going into the nuances of it, because I think a lot of people may hear life insurance and they don't know exactly what to purchase, or they may not really understand how vital life insurance really is as far as the first steps of building the first foundation of a legacy.
Gotcha. All good. So, um, basically, I got into the business um, at the time. I was looking for different. I was in the mortgage business. Then I think the financial crash happened. I pivoted over to insurance, and I just I've always had a love and a passion for helping people, first of all. And then once I was starting to take the classes and I started to understand just how powerful life insurance is. One of the things I tell myself every day is like you really have the ability to change a family's financial future for generations to come. I tell myself that daily as a reason to get moving. People need to hear what you have to say because one conversation with me could mean the difference between a foreclosure if somebody dies, difference between if somebody has to pick up a second job after the main breadwinner dies, difference between them having to be on the selling fish plates or starting to GoFundMe, and all those things are so unnecessary with proper planning. And most people don't think about life insurance. Most people that call me, they end up calling me after they heard about somebody that passed away or a certain situation. Most people don't just say, "Oh, I need life insurance," or people will say, "Well, I already have life insurance. I have a policy at work." They'll say, "I got benefits at the job," and then I ask them how much do they have at the job, and most of them don't know, which is fine because they can easily look it up through HR. But it's good to know these things. You should actually have a life insurance review annually because things change annually. A new child may be born.
Hold on, real
Income
quick.
may have increased.
I'm sorry, just real quick and stuff. When you say have it reviewed annually, what all does that entail?
Well, basically, when you have your policy reviewed, you're basically not reviewing the policy per se because the policy really doesn't change that much
Okay.
depending on the product you get. But you're basically reviewing to see if anything in the life has changed. You know, did you get a new job? Did you lose a job? Was a child born? Um, you pick up another stream of income because you may need to increase your policy. So there's just different things like that do happen in life that need to be discussed annually because we're in a society we're in, things can change on the drop of a dime.
Absolutely.
So we just need to always have that policy reviewed. You may have gone through a divorce, you need to change the beneficiary, anything.
Ah,
So
yeah,
there's,
that's a good
there's
point.
there's a lot of different things that can happen.
Absolutely.
Um, so basically, just to make it simple, um, basically have two types of policies. You have a term policy. Well, actually, there's three. I won't say because now they have a third one that's really catched up a lot of steam. We have term policies, whole life policy, and universal policies. I'll briefly go through what those are. The term policies basically you can do 10, 20, 30, even 15 and 25, depending on the company, for a term. Just how it sounds. So for that term, that means that your premium is level and will not change. After the term is up, they will continue to insure you, but they will increase your policy every year, for example. Term is definitely um, the least expensive of all the policies, and people don't understand how affordable life insurance is. Like, for example, a 30-year-old that just has average health, not great health, 30-year-old has average health can get a 10-year $1 million term policy for under $40 a month. Something less
Wow.
than you spend on a meal out.
Well, how
Um,
long would that term be though?
that's a 10-year term.
That's a 10-year term. So
But at some point in your life, that may be all you can afford.
so you're basically saying that for a 30-year-old for getting a 10-year term, they can get $1 million policy. Well, what happens after that 10 years? Are they want to be uninsured, correct?
No, they don't. The majority of the companies now they have what's called guaranteed insurability. So after the term is up, let's say in the 11th year, yeah, say you're 30, they then rate you as a 41-year-old, next year as a 42-year-old, and so on. I always suggest to my clients look at the 30 or the 20-year just for the longevity. But at the time, a 10 where you are in your life, a 10-year may be all you can afford at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's all you can afford, get that. Just be sure your family is covered in whatever at whatever death benefit that you need. Um, so come year 2, 3, 4 down the line, your income may have increased. And that's where the policy reviews are important to say, hey, you may want to take that to a 30-year term now. And you're going to pay a little more, but it'll be worth it. So after year 10, it won't increase on you every year. And basically, term is like rent, so to speak. It doesn't earn any cash value. You just base it works like auto insurance. Like I say, if you don't use it and it lapses, then it doesn't pay you anything. Just like auto insurance, if you never get in an accident, it's just money that's renting for the month. Same thing. So with the whole life policies, those are the ones that build cash value. Those are more expensive, and those normally come with a guaranteed rate of return and the cash value. So there are a lot of proponents to whole life because people say, like the Dave Ramseys and other people like that, they'll say, just get term and invest the rest in like stocks, bonds, other things like that. Which I do agree with to some extent, just depending on where you are in your life. Um, whole life is good because you know you're getting a guaranteed rate of return. If you go into stocks, bonds, and you don't have the correct knowledge of those stocks and bonds, you end up losing your investment.
Can you
Whole life.
explain that real quick? Just for the average listener, I mean, just explain that last line.
Well, with when you go to dip into the stocks and the mutual funds, and you don't have knowledge of what you're really doing, the average person in America does not know how to invest in stocks and mutual funds. They listen to a broker or they listen to what they hear on TV. Most people don't study the markets. So if you're just an average individual, you don't have enough expertise to invest the rest that you could be invested in a whole life policy. So if you're a person who does not know that, whole life isn't a bad vehicle just to have some guaranteed returns. You know you're paying for the life insurance, but a portion of that premium also goes guaranteed. And the beautiful thing about life insurance is that cash value is tax free. And when I say tax free, you can borrow from it without being taxed, and it grows tax free as well, similar to like a Roth IRA or an annuity. And there's also another type of policy called a universal life policy. These are, I would say, they're newer, probably in the last 20 years or so. These become more popular. So basically, with the universal life, they're a little bit cheaper than whole life. They're like kind of in the middle. So with the universal life policies, the cash value that you're investing actually goes into, like, for example, the S&P 500, or it can go into a Dow 30 account. So now you're getting to take advantage of market gains. So you have a lot of chance for more explosive growth in these universal life policies. And the beautiful part about it is, let's say, for example, in these policies, they give you, I would say, brackets. Just to have an easier word. So you can own, let's say the market does, in a particular fund, let's say the market does 30% that year. Your fund, you and your policy, you may only get 15% from the way it's set up. Even if that particular index does better, you may only get 15%. But the benefit to that is if the market tanks and does negative 30, you don't lose any money. So a lot of people are pivoting to that and throwing as much money as they can into these because they're not having to catch back up when the market dips. If you have a normal 401k or a normal mutual fund and the market dips, you have to wait for so many more years of growth to catch yourself back up. And these particular cash fund accounts, you're not losing any money. You're only gaining, which is a beautiful thing. And that's, the government has also realized this. The government also has limited the amount of money you can put into these, because you can actually put into these policies more than your premium. But the government puts a limit on how much you can put into them because they know that people are taking advantage of these tax breaks. Some people are even getting so slick as to where they are even pumping these things with the maximum they can put into it. And
Mm-hmm.
when they get to retirement, they're actually pulling out. There's so much cash built up. They're now pulling out tax-free cash every year as a second retirement fund to combat the volatility in their 401k. So they're maxing these universal life policies out, and you can kind of predict how much money, let's say when you turn 55 or so, how much money that you can pull out annually tax free.
So you're saying that, and so you're saying that the money that you can be able to pull out is tax free, and that's totally legal within the U.S. tax code, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely legal. That's why they limit how much you can put in there. The government limits because what happens is once you put too much money in there, it sends up a red flag, and they won't allow you. The company won't allow you to put so much more in there because they call it, I think, a seven. It's like a seven guideline test, and there's these parameters that they use to see if you're putting too much money in these to where it becomes what they call an endowment contract at that point. Then it becomes taxable if you start putting too much money in it. So that's another reason for review, to be sure that your cash value and what you're putting in is always under that amount, so you keep your tax-free benefit.
So how savvy does a person need to be to understand those three levels of the tax? I mean, not taxes. Those three levels of insurance investments. So meaning like if somebody is on this, we're like I said, we're recording live. Um, we got the Rockin' Robin in the background trying to get on the podcast. So shout out to Rockin' Robin. And we're doing this also too. We're quarantined. I mean, not quarantine. We're both shelter in place, and we're doing this remotely. So assuming that somebody's listening to this podcast, they're still on the shelter in place. They're looking at reevaluating what they need to do for their kids, and they have no ideas of life insurance. What would be the best way to guide them into selecting life insurance? Let's start off with somebody that's probably making about $35,000 or less. You know, first question is, should they buy life insurance based on your experience? I think the answer is yes, but I want to hear from your expert opinion. And the second question is, or actually, the second comment is, how would you guide them into understanding the appropriate type of coverage to select?
Okay, great question. So basically, when I sit down with clients, and even in the society as it is now with the COVID-19, how we're forced to social distance, things like that, due to technology, um, we can have remote meetings through Zoom or on the phone, and most of our carriers have electronic applications, so that won't be an issue as far as that. But first thing, if they're, let's say, someone who's making $35,000 a year, first thing I want to do, if there's a couple, um, see if they're single or married, see if they have any children, and then I would see what debts they have. Are they a homeowner? Um, or if they have kids, do they plan to send their kids to college? So after we find out what their debts are, we'll put that in the column and say, well, we want to get those things passed off. And one of the first questions I ask, sitting in if I'm sitting with a couple, we'll say, Mr. Johnson, if something happened to you tomorrow on your way home from work, what would you want to have in place for your wife and your family? And that's how I kind of start off the conversation. And, my wife is always kind of looking with radar ears at that point and a very stern look most of the time, just to see what he's going to
Mm-hmm.
say. But then, like I tell him, we want to get you in a position where all your debts are paid off, and we want to at least replace your income by 10 years. I'll say 7 to 10 years of income that you also want to see paid off. So this guy that's 35, makes 35,000. You want to look at least 350,000 for income replacement.
Mm-hmm.
If they have debts, say if there's $100,000 mortgage, a couple cars, a couple of credit accounts, that might be, we'll say, another 125,000, maybe another 150 with student loans. So now we're up at $500,000, which sounds like a lot. It's like, wow, do I really need $500,000 of life insurance?
Yeah.
But what that does is, for the next 10 years, wife or the husband does not have to go look for a second job. They don't have to worry about pulling the kids out of, then a certain, they might have to move due to a foreclosure. They don't have to do that. There's no debts to pay. The house is free and clear. The house can now be transferred on from generation to generation. So you don't want to have to deal with all these financial pressures while trying to grieve at the same time. Because
Absolutely.
if you're in a position where you have to make certain decisions in your life due to finances, you may not always make the right decision or the best decision for your family, but financial pressure will cause you to make decisions you normally wouldn't have made if the finances were there. So when you have the power to get ahead of all of that, definitely take advantage of it. So in a situation like that, like I said, that person is, if I said they can get $1 million policy for under $40, $500,000 policy, they can probably get for under 20, around more than maybe 22, $20 a month. And it may be a 10-year, that because that may be all they can afford. I got another $30 in the budget. Cool. Let's work within your budget. I don't want you to get too much insurance, even though you need it, but I don't want you to have to think about not having to pay it in 3 or 4 months because things get tight for you financially. So I tell them, even if you can't get the whole five, let's get 250, and that's where the annual reviews come in. Remember
Yeah.
last year we talked about your 500,000. Are you in a better position now? You can add another 250. So we just keep building up to that point that they need. Even if they can't get that, get something, and don't depend on what you have at work, because more than not, it's not enough. And
Yeah.
they
Why
will,
is that?
because they don't care. They're just giving you something to get you in the gig. Oh,
Right.
we give you life insurance, we give you health, we give you dental, we give you vision, but definitely look at what you currently have in HR. Um, but what they give you at work is never tailor made for your own personal situation. It's always a blanket amount. That might be maybe two, three more than your income in some cases. Some is just 25 or maybe 50. Just depends on the company you're at.
Yeah.
But definitely always have your own policy, because situation like this, your job can be taken away like that. Your health can change just like that. And then you're not able to get life insurance. So definitely take advantage while you're healthy.
You know,
You don't
that's,
always have
I'm
till next
sorry.
month or a couple months to wait, because health can change just like that. So definitely take advantage when you can.
Yeah. And,
Go
you
ahead.
know, and I'm glad that you said that particular part because what a lot of people who don't understand who are currently in the workforce is a lot of the benefits that are provided, whether it be from your 401k, from your health insurance to your life insurance, they are provided basically a bare bones for most. I would say maybe 80 to 90% of employer benefit plans are going to be bare bones, meaning that you're going to get something, but they're going to find the cheapest, lowest cost alternative to their bottom line because they're paying into the group for your employment, and especially with turnover, depending on the industry, you're going to have, they're not going to continue to reinvest that money back into benefits. So, I mean, unless you're like in a different industry like aerospace or some healthcare entities, or other companies, financial industries, or whatever the case may be. What they do is that they wind up exposing you to these low cost plan and alternatives. They may say that they have your best interest in mind for these different plans, but in actuality, they don't provide you a lot of other options and benefits. And then we'll talk about the 401k side a little bit later, but I think that just to kind of add what he was saying, I think that having, if you want at the very least insure your children for the very minimum, there's nothing wrong with that, as far as going through your employer. But as far as like long term, and like in the way that he's explaining, it's best to kind of start looking at other options, because the other reality is too is that a lot of these administrators, a lot of these carriers that they're using, the reality is that when that time does come, there might be a delay in payment, there might be a delay in benefits, or they may look for a reason to disqualify you. Is that correct?
They can,
Yeah.
if they want to. It would just depend on your situation. I guess when you're looking at whatever job that you're at, they can possibly contest it. Like let's say let's great example. Let's say if you have, say if you're working for a company and you have you, your wife, and your children on your life insurance. let's say that you go through a divorce. So now there's going to be a time your wife, who was your wife, is no longer on your life insurance. Okay. So if something happens to her, they can contest that and say, no, if you are going through or about to be divorced, they can kind of contest that, saying that, no, you're no longer married, so you're no longer insured. So there's different life changes that can happen real fast. And so most life insurance can't be contested, I would say, except for suicides. Some policies, if you have major health issues, some policies have like a 2-year waiting period, but that should be explained before you take the policy so you know that up front. But like I said, there is things like guaranteed insurance also. Like no matter what health issue you have, there's a life insurance policy, but there is a waiting period that you have to go through to get the whole death benefit. So if you pass away having one of these guaranteed issue policies before that 2 to 3 year period, you'll get your premium back normally with about 10 to 15% interest. I mean, it's still better than nothing, but they want you to live beyond that waiting period before you get the full death benefit. But yeah, most life insurance isn't contested unless um, there might be a criminal investigation involved or suicides involved. That's one of the things that they won't pay for as well. Um, but I think it goes to I think life insurance is a big mindset thing that people, because everybody lives for today. We rarely plan for the future, think about the future and next generations. And that's like with our people, we're constantly starting over from ground zero. We can't keep starting over because we just keep digging ourselves in holes, and things are going to get tougher and tougher out here. As you see, look at the situation we're in now. If you want to know about uncertainty at times, uh, I had somebody say, imagine somebody went away to a remote island for like 3 months, turned off their phones and computers, and just came back today and like, what's going on? Found out COVID did.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was wild, man. That was
Right. You found out about this COVID-19. We're definitely on lockdown. You like, what's done happened to the world?
yeah.
Just in the blink of an eye.
Yep.
And
The
this is
lockdown.
this is something happened globally. Um, and especially now, definitely, if you don't have life insurance, you think you need more. Now is a definite time to do so, because if things get worse, the companies can stop selling policies. They can put a moratorium on new policies. They're still contractually bound to pay enforce policies, but they can say we're not selling any more new life insurance until this pandemic has subsided. That hasn't happened yet, but they're well within their right to do so. So definitely take advantage, because you never know from day to day. I keep hearing news stories all the time of my uncle, my friend, mother, everything has contracted the virus. So if this doesn't let you know just how fragile and how quick life can turn, nothing will.
Absolutely. And, even, just kind of going back about as far as life situation change may occur and stuff. I actually have a policy that Butler has for my family. And, when we first talked about it, I was saying I was in the middle of a transition and that I would get back to him. I already had life insurance, but I, told him I was going to get back to him once these certain life events had happened. And because at the time I did have adequate coverage, and then when that life event changed, which was actually a move, um, I had reached out to him and said, "Hey, I want to go ahead and up my policy, and I want to go through you and stuff," because I knew, I know him personally, and I knew that he would have my best interest in heart. But the other thing too was not even a couple of months before we actually, or actually a couple of weeks before we were scheduled to sit down, I was laid off from the industry. So that was a big shock. And I remember him, we talked about it, and he asked me if I still wanted to proceed as planned. And so I just made a small nominal change off of $50,000 a person, for the policy and stuff. But, like you said, you always got to reevaluate and you always got to reassess, because I know that if something does happen to at least me, then at the very least the house is paid off, and then you know my student loan debt, which we'll talk about that, God, in some episode, but that's going to be gone, and so whatever I have left in cash investments in stocks, that's inherited, which will be almost the equivalent of another insurance policy. And I say that because I had to reevaluate, because otherwise the current policy that I had would not have been enough, and then it would have exposed my family to risk of even possibly losing a home, or not being able to cover a large portion of what's affordable for this house. And so that's huge. And then as far as like another situation, we're not going to talk about it today because we're running short on time. Was that this past weekend, one thing I kept putting off, me and the missus kept putting off, was a will, and so I sat down last weekend, and I didn't do it out of fear. That's one thing that you shouldn't. You don't do this out of fear. Do this as an investment to make sure you're protecting your family's interest, your name for generations to come. People talk about generational wealth. This is one of the first foundational steps, is to make sure that come hell and high water, if something happens, you have at least some form of financial coverage. Another point I wanted to point out, just um, to add on to what he was saying, is that for whatever the reasons, and I think it's just because of the wealth gap that's present. A New York Life Insurance Gap survey showed that African Americans report more financial stress than overall population, which we do, but we're also more proactive about addressing it, and saying that nearly 80% of African Americans said having life insurance is a goal versus 63% of all adults. So the thought is there, but now we got to turn these thoughts into action, because even though the 80 to 90% are believing that life insurance can help future generations, the numbers are probably around the 60% range, as far as people who actually have life insurance. So, like Butler said, you think about what happened to Kobe Bryant, or you get the COVID virus, coronavirus, and I mean the way that some people are dying, you don't have the luxury of time. You don't have the luxury of time from you know what, 4 or 5 days in some situations, where you have the virus, and then you could be passed away. And that little gap right there can expose your family. So don't delay. And Butler, just one more time, what's your website?
Website is www.d as in dog, f as in Frank, globalinsurance.com. And there you'll find office number, and you can go in there and request a quote, any line of business. But if you want life insurance, we were talking about it, you want to request a quote, and somebody get back with you ASAP.
So what we'll do is that for the next session, we'll actually continue the conversation of life insurance. I think that Butler really went into a very deep dive discussion of it. But I want to make sure, both of us would like to make sure that our audience is able to understand the the nuances of life insurance. I mean, when you start looking at different scenarios, like what you may consider to be applicable. I know it's a lot of information to absorb on a podcast for those who are not knowing of life insurance or understanding how life insurance works. So I just think that it's good to just to kind of continue this conversation for our next episode, so we can start looking at more direct experiences. And in the meantime, what we'll do is that we'll probably have um, some feedback from just random people, people that we know, and just ask them, like, what are scenarios that you consider as far as life insurance. We haven't even talked about coverage for your children, and even trying to look at the point to when to change your coverage for your child. So, like, for example, my son's about to go into the Air Force, and so there's no need for me to continue life insurance after he's going into the military. I could if I wanted to, but there's not really a substantial need, because of the fact that once he goes into the military, he has coverage, and to for he has coverage for burial. He'll have some form of life insurance. And the beneficiaries will benefit, et cetera, et cetera. But I carried my 19-year-old for life insurance, because Lord forbid if anything happens to him, then I do have the unnecessary, or I have the unfortunate experience of trying to come up with the burial money. And a lot of us don't have what's funeral burial cost about 5,000, 8,000. You know
Actually,
offhand?
average is about 12,000. Actually, nationally.
12,000. So I mean, it's like, I mean, let's be real. A lot of us doesn't have 12,000, and we should be able to put, we should be able to give our loved ones a sense of dignity when they transition on, or even ourselves. We shouldn't really expose our significant other, our children into a financial situation, because that's part of the, that's one of the variables that drags us down as far as net worth, and or to be able to accumulate wealth and net worth, is the fact that when people do pass, if we don't protect our interests, with that type of consideration, then you're exposing another generation to debt and increased financial risk. So, um, again, we'll cover more of this next week or next podcast. I think Butler did a dope job on there. I don't know what happened to our bird in the background. Hopefully, the bird comes back next week. Um, you
Because
got any
yeah,
last?
seems like
Huh?
we'll still be remote.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. We look like we're gonna be
so
remote for a hot minute.
the birds will probably be back also.
Yeah, yeah. It might be more birds and stuff because it's kind of cold outside today. So, but any final words on just hope? What did you hope that the audience took away from your perspective?
Like again, I just hope that you are motivated to review your current policies. Motivated to review your whole. Now you have a lot of downtime now. Review your whole financial situation. And the key word you mentioned earlier was net worth. Review your net worth. Find out what your assets are versus your liabilities. And life insurance is a great way to take out those liabilities. Like I said, unfortunately, we all have to leave here. So there's no escaping that. You can't escape the fact that one day you're going to pass. But what you can do is say, when I do pass, I want to leave this world better than when I was here, before I was here. So that's a great way. A lot of thinking the single people come to me and say, why do I need life insurance? I don't have any children. If you don't have a children, I'm sure you got uh, possibly a niece, possibly a nephew. You might have a godchild, or you may know someone's family you can still be a blessing to. And if you can pay another $20 a month for a cousin that's young or something like that, the power to change their financial future in the blink of an eye is an awesome gift. It's an awesome gift you can give somebody, to have this like a heads up start that they normally wouldn't have had. So don't always look at it as throwing away money or something like that. You are pouring into somebody's future. We have to be more future directed, more planning directed, so we can begin to build on what we have versus, like I said, always start from ground zero. So I hope this is motivating to you. I hope it makes you take some sort of action, call the office or do more research on your own. However, I just hope that you are motivated to take action.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it's been a pleasure, man, getting this first one off our belt, under our belt. I know that we've just kind of a little brief background about this podcast. I mean, this is actually the second version of the first launch, because we actually had a goal to record it and release it a little bit later and just record our episodes ahead of time. But it just kind of echoing what Butler was saying earlier about how things change. I mean, what we recorded our first episode that first Sunday in March with a projected March 27th release. And in that particular period of time, so much has changed, from no sports, um, countries started closing their borders. I mean, things that you've never seen before, or even would even imagine. Stuff that's coming from a video game, stuff that's coming from a television show or from a movie. It's playing out in real life. I mean, we can't, we can't really go anywhere without that being on our mind as far as personal contact. I mean, we're very social people. We're very connected people, and I just think about, even earlier, I went to go see my mom and pick some stuff up, and it was I've been FaceTiming her and everything and stuff, but it was very heartbreaking to be 6 to 10 feet away from my mom, and not just to be able to give her a hug. That's something I haven't and I haven't given my mom a hug in over a month, and because I don't want her to get sick, and I don't want her to pass it to my grandparents or whatever, and we're definitely practicing the social distancing, and it's just, um, you just never know what can happen. So if you're procrastinating or whatever and stuff, you are exposing not only yourself, you're exposing your children to additional financial risk, and don't think that you're invincible, because this thing has shown that, I mean, it's affecting all walks of life. And I mean, thank you again for listening to our podcast. Again, this podcast is for us. It's our conversation to our people. And I don't care who else listens to this podcast. Um, as long as we black people start listening to each other, and what we black people will continue to do, will be able to uplift, inspire, motivate, and enlighten as often as possible, because by the end of the day, we're responsible for turning this thing around, and we're responsible for building each other up. And if you think about, in a lot of ways and stuff, that we came from Africa, and you think about how African cultures were back in the day, and even in some areas still now, about how information was shared, well before technology, before podcasts, cell phones, text messages. We learned through communicating to each other, sharing our stories, sharing our beliefs, sharing our values. And I think that we've gotten away from that. And I think Butler can definitely agree with this part. We wanted to do this to try to recreate that type of energy and be able to share that. So um, we just want to be able to help you guys out, and hopefully you'll learn from us, and we definitely hope to learn from you. And whatever information or whatever you agree or disagree, you're more than welcome to come on the show and dispute that. You're more than welcome to come on the show to debate that, because our voice is just one of many, and our voice is not the beginning and the end, but it's definitely a start of a conversation. So, with that said, thank you again for listening to Mahogany Thoughts. I hope that you guys continue to be safe, be well, be peaceful, be blessed, wash your hands, and continue to remember social distancing for right now. Thank you again. Talk to y'all later. Peace.
Be safe.